upset on this one for ages, re-listening to the discography multiple times, reacting differently, rethinking the rank. There's such a consistent quality and nearly nothing to slag off. I'll still try stacking them up. It'll be arbitrary, but from your perspective, every episode of this show is, as is the concept of having an opinion at all. Enjoy.
Ringtone albums.
You're only an Indigo child for so long, then you're a discoloured adult. There's an introductory EP, cassette, whatever. The very good fan site Lifeblood provides these tracks. As a few of them are replicated on later releases, I'm not going to rank it, but that doesn't mean its unique tracks aren't excellent. Now, pretend this is a good segue to their full length. And this demonstrates the creative depth of this duo. They're one of those very consistent songwriting duos like I've already confronted in Bad Religion, in Veruca Salt, and maybe if I knew more about the Beatles. But there's also the gorgeous thing that each of them adds to each other's songs, which is mainly very sweet harmonies. Not every piece is in place on this first one, particularly like percussion is quite directly the sound of the two of them with their guitars, and that's just a textural limit to this one. Also, I believe it was published with different track listings, but this is the one with the cover song on it. And maybe it's a post-Nirvana response, but I'm not sure anyone needs the song Get Together anymore. That song just seems like a cute folk hobby. So I'd prefer for that not to take up a space here, but it doesn't weigh it down too much. The actual songwriting on here is top tier, but the execution hasn't quite found itself yet. And then it immediately finds itself. With an even higher level of songwriting integrity, this sounds like a band several albums into their career and delivering at their best, but it's just the second one and we've got more of the best to come. Repeating a track from the debut is okay when they've made it a bit better, and the rest of it sits at that same level. Excellent songwriting, now performed excellently. After such an obvious success, it would be easy to follow it up, and maybe even if you slightly follow it down, you'd still be doing well. Except the girls didn't really manage. I don't know if they were rushing for a deadline or something, there's just nothing of interest on this one. If I were to say it has the feel of a B-sides compilation, I think even that's too high praise. It's not offensive, it's just not impressive, and they've set a standard where we already expect them to be very impressive. They took a break from that. When their USP thus far has been showing what power they can build out of an acoustic setup, here they forget the power, and with it the point. It's got the texture, but not the content. But it was just a break and they're back to it. This is more of their great work, and there's more of their great work on it. Really, in this career, it's hard to find individual descriptors for the album. They have a signature sound, and they quite generally make that signature sound. It remains welcome and it's returned to being impressive. Here they're properly reacting to having a bit of pop appeal by doing a bit of pop appeal, which brings greater focus to their strengths. Then they double down on the impressiveness. The increased inclusion of a full band sound is the right way for this duo to develop. I know it arguably undermines their core property, but they've offered plenty in that particular context. And now they kind of fucking rock, and when it's beautiful and it rocks, that's just two means of being the best. Now they're really just concentrating on offering the best of what's at their core. And that's a winning streak they're not ready to let up on. This is the sound of a touring band at their best, still making some of their best work. Stepping out from their core a bit, they're showing what they can do as a band on the road. There's a very welcome rougher edge that makes this one exceptional. Letting themselves be a 90s old rock band is a way to score many points with me. And then, yeah, another I'd have to describe similarly. They're just so good at it. Maybe by now the 90s are ending and they're not exactly going to expand their fanbase anymore until there's a Barbie movie. They were in the Barbie movie? I have since watched the Barbie movie. It was just about okay. They could have let the girls cameo if they had an interest in butch representation. But they know what they've got to offer. They know how to satisfy their existing listeners. This one starts with a kind of of hard rock mockbuster set up to a new level of aggression that's just not quite enough, and they don't commit to it. They spin their wheelhouse a bit with a few more minutes of rock that hasn't quite convinced itself, so won't quite convince an audience. Then musicians reach a point in their late 30s where they decide to be mature, and all the pictures of them end up as washed out, front-on, expressionless mugshots. And that can be a sign of the music becoming MOR, AOR. By stepping back like this, they've accepted a bit of a compromise that might end up with them potentially being boring. And it is lesser music, but it's still a vibe that they can very much command. This gentler approach counts as a USP here, stripping down not to what they were before, but as a very legitimate middle age of the storm. And that's how the ooies go for Indigo Girls. There's a streak here where there's not that many highlights, really. This is further laps around the wheelhouse. As I place this low down, let me point out that it's still satisfying music and it's got perfect world on. Look, a rarities compilation. One that's gonna do well because of quantity, because their quality doesn't vary very far, because they don't try any less for B-sides, and because they're good at covers. This would be S rank if I wasn't docking it some points for reiteration. Here's an ooies album in which they pulled it all together, returned to great ideas. Their personality is back aflame with multiple of their best tracks, despite our diffident album cover. When I first encountered this one, I thought it was an actual double album. I mean, clearly I misread it. This is just a deluxe edition with an acoustic version as the second disc, and considering how acoustic their fully produced sound is, it's not an important extra product. Maybe something like a double album would have shaken them up a bit, or an album with lots of collaborators or something. In this middle decade, their songwriting is continuing just as a habit, a compulsion. Being a smaller set and one with less to take notice of, this is gonna sink. If I'm asking for them to do something different at this point, maybe I should be careful what I wish for, what I ask for Christmas. There's a Christmas album at this point, and I was thinking I'd just stubbornly refuse to listen to a Christmas album and just plonk a minus in the video title. Christmas is unjustifiable as a tradition and makes for some horrible music. It's even December as I record this, but Bad Religion's one was good, and it's free to put something on, and okay, I don't know what I fucking expected. Horrible stuff, which technically might make it good festive music. It's not gonna grow on me after any more listens. It's obviously the poorest product, and their only off-putting work, then maybe it at least represents represents a creative rejuvenation of those girls, cause we're on the way back up now. Well, we'd have to be. And then another that's not exactly doing anything new or experimental, it's just another quite good work. Kinda a typical later album. It's satisfying but not special. The expressionless and overexposed era continues, but that no longer has any claim to describing the music. Here the girls have re-embraced their vitality. There's a bit of a vibe here of, you know when a musician moves from country to pop? That kind of Americana graduation that many could see as a compromise. With a quarter century behind them, the Indigo Girls made that kind of transition without any compromise to dignity. It just makes the songs more frontal and even more satisfying. They're even playing about a bit more with instruments, textures, different ideas. That finally brings them back to their 90s standard of the album having a properly unique character, plus a few of their career highlights. Now they've really picked back up. Them were becoming quite recent, and when you consider how many decades into the career this band is, you would not expect something anywhere near this quality. Still in that country radio sound, and now more comfortable in it. They bring multiple tracks here that would obviously easily be mainstream hits if performed by someone 30 years younger. I've no reason to presume they won't produce any more albums, but if they don't, that's a really great one to go out on, showing that they are still very measurably at their best. There's a bit of hoarseness to the vocals now, and I think I'm hearing auto-tune. Please don't. Did you enjoy the tech splash? That can't actually undermine the quality on here. It's only quantity that's putting this below the prior one. My video concludes with the scent of a winning streak. They have solo albums, Amy has multiple, and it shows another side to her composition skills. I think they would kind of clog up this video. There's something to look at separately, but do have a look. It's far from being just more of the same. Amy particularly chose that separate avenue to make separate sounds. Swampophilia stayed at the top. It's not a definitive thing, there's just something about the pureness of its quality. It's several rungs down before any of these discs' brilliance comes with any asterisks. And honestly, as far as holiday albums go, that is probably a good one. It just shouldn't exist.